Hello and welcome back. This is part two of our getting our web server accessible to the internet. And in part one, we did the DNS side of it in Azure DNS and we tested that using NSLookup. And now in part two, what we're going to do is we're going to work on PF1 and create the firewall rules. I'll do my best to explain them as we go. So let's jump over to PF1. Okay, so I'm over here on my PF1 and I go to the Firewall tab at the top and I go to Rules. Let's take a look at what we've got. So we have a WAN interface listed in CorpNet, and we're currently WAN is selected. Floating rules are rules that apply to multiple interfaces. So I'm looking at the WAN and I have these two deny rules, and these came from those questions we answered when we installed pfSense. You know, the 1918 rule says don't allow any 172s or 192 addresses or 10 dot addresses, and then the other one says don't allow any networks that are that aren't part of the traditional IP address pool. They call them bogon networks. So these are two default rules. On the CorpNet side, we've got these are outbound rules, and we've got our default rules for CorpNet, and then we've also got rules that we put in place for DevNet. So we did more work on this interface, but what we need to do now is we need to open up some ports on the WAN interface to allow unsolicited inbound traffic to our web server. Unsolicited meaning that it comes from the internet without anybody inside of our network requesting it. So let's do the IPv4 ones first. Okay, so what we need to do for IP version 4 is we need to create a NAT rule, because remember we only have one routable IPv4 address. So from the firewall dropdown, we go to NAT, and then we go to add. You can either add it at the top of your list or at the bottom. My list is empty, and so I'm just going to go ahead and add it at the top. Okay. As I work my way down, what interface is the NAT going to be applied to the WAN interface? It's IPv4, and the protocol for HTTP and HTTPS is TCP, so all of that is defaulted. Destination is somebody making a request to my WAN interface. If I had multiple IP addresses, I would hit this drop down and make the choice about which WAN IP address I was using, but we just have one, so WAN address works. Destination port. Well, let's do HTTP first. So requests coming in on the WAN interface for HTTP need to be redirected to a single host, and let's type its address here. Okay, that's my address for server 1. And then we have the choice here, redirected port. You can do port swapping here. We're not going to do that. We're going to listen on port 80 and we're going to redirect to port 80. So I go here and I say also HTTP. And description, I'm going to call this my NAT HTTP rule for server 1. Now there's some convenience here down at the bottom, and that's where we can automatically, or pfSense will automatically create the firewall rule to complement the NAT rule. So what we're really doing is by leaving this as a add an associated filter rule, we're actually doing two things. We're creating the NAT Network Address Translation Association and the firewall rule. It's very nice, but I just want you to understand that there's actually two things happening, and this one is done automatically by default. So let's save it and take a look at what we got here. So I'm still looking at NAT port forwarding. So this is the NAT rule. Let me go ahead and apply it. If I go to the firewall now and I go to firewall rules, you can see now that I've now got my inbound listening rule for HTTP. Looks like it doubled up on the name, so I'll clean that up. Now to do the HTTPS one is exactly the same. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to do my HTTPS, and then let's compare notes. Let's just touch bases here before I save my rule. So I went to firewall and to NAT, and I went to add another rule, and I mentioned it's the same as HTTP, well, almost the same. What you do here is you just choose as destination port HTTPS instead of HTTP, but you fill everything else out exactly the same. So I'm going to listen on the WAN interface. It's IPv4. The protocol is TCP, and that's appropriate for HTTPS. I come down and The redirected port is HTTPS, and then here is the redirected target IP is that's server 1 for me. Okay. And that's it. I did clean up my name. I had that double name thing going, and I apply that, and so now I've got 2 NAT rules, and it's pfSense is very descriptive here. The asterisk meaning a wildcard. Source address would be what address on the internet, and we're saying any address that's coming in from the internet. We're not being selective. We could be selective. We could say, well, only, from this network ID, only, TDS customers, whatever their IP address block is, or only Ziply customers, or only, Spectrum customers, or a lot of things there. And also what port do they originate from doesn't apply really to HTTP, HTTPS, but you get the idea. Okay, so those 2 rules. Now those are the NAT rules. And then because we have that automatic creation of the firewall rule, if we go to the firewall rules, then those are the firewall rules. Okay, and it didn't change anything on the CorpNet side. CorpNet rules were unchanged. These are just listening rules. So what's happening now is PF1 is listening on the WAN side for requests coming in on port 80 or port 443, and it's redirecting those, first doing network address translation and redirecting those to this IP address on port 80 or port 443. Now you're thinking, well, Randy, what if I made a mistake? There's no problem here at all, and there's also no caching involved. So you just go in and fix it. If you need to, the best place to fix it is to go back to the NAT rule, because remember, this rule is this is the firewall rule here. This rule is a consequence, or it happens because of the NAT rule. So if you got something wrong, go back to the NAT rule and go to edit it. That's what the pencil is here. Make your correction, save it, and then once you save it, you'll get that apply up here at the top. Apply it, and it will automatically also update then the firewall rule. So we're at 7 minutes on this video. I'm going to close up this one, and we'll do another one where all we deal with is just IPv6. All right, I'll see you in that video.